to all your questions. Is vegetarianism compulsory in Buddhism? Now, this is a very controversial subject. Even during the Buddha's time also, they had a lot of arguments regarding these issues. There were two well-known religions in India, Jainism and Hinduism. Jainism was very popular during the Buddha's time, and they are vegetarians. They don't destroy even the plant life. When the monks started to cut down trees and destroy the plant life, they criticized very badly, because their belief was plants also got the same life process, and many of our senses that we experience, plant life also experience the same thing. Although the Buddha has rejected that belief, but he advised the monks not to destroy plant life, because the monks had to work with the public. If many people don't like such practices, it is very difficult for them to work with others. Plant life got only one sense. We have five. Plant life got only one. The Buddha also introduced this as Ekindriya Satta. Those living beings who got only one sense. We have five. That means the feeling. If there is no feeling, plant life cannot take food. And there are certain plants, when you go near, some changes take place. Either they close the leaves, if not open, the sensitivity. And recently, scientists have discovered many more things. How they experience the sound vibration. So today they are using all sort of music to entertain the plant life and produce more fruits and more flowers. And some others tested this by radiating mental energy towards the plant life. Purposely they have done this by providing same earth and fertilizer and the water to different kinds of flower pots. Every day they go and radiate love towards one group and go and hate the other group. But the fertilizer, the water, and the earth are the same. And they have found out differences. This is scientific experiments. And the plants that they go and radiate their loving kindness towards them started to produce more fruits and more flowers, and the size also bigger than the other group. And the plant that were cursed or hated by these people produce less fruit and less flowers, and the size also small. So this is not a belief or theory nowadays. So it clearly shows the plant life also very sensitive. And people go and worship, pray to certain trees. They try to communicate plant life, thinking that there are certain invisible spirits or devas around or the vicinity of that particular tree. And they say they experience a lot of good result. Although they believe this, the influence of certain invisible spirits or devas, so far we have not realized how far the plant life can influence us. We have learned how to influence the trees. It is true. But we do not know how this plant life can influence us, our physical body. Still not very clear. So by considering this, the Buddha has given this advice not to destroy even the plant life. And they were vegetarian, mostly Jainas. Hindus were divided into two groups, vegetarians and non-vegetarians. Even today, many of those Brahmins are vegetarian, but ordinary people are not vegetarians. When this issue was brought forward, some of the disciples of the Buddha came and advised him to introduce vegetarianism. The Buddha said, "It is unfair. It is impossible for me to introduce this. So my policy is this. Those who like to be vegetarian, they can go ahead. Those who like to eat whatever they receive, they must have that liberty to take any kind of food." This is the explanation the Buddha had to give. From that day onward, the Sangha community or the monks also divided into two groups, vegetarians and non-vegetarians. In Theravada Buddhist countries like Burma, Thailand, Sri Lanka and some other countries, some are vegetarian, some are non-vegetarian. In Mahayana countries, China, Korea, Taiwan, most of them are vegetarians. Again, Japan, Mongolia, Tibet are non-vegetarian. So the Mahayana also divided into two groups. So Theravada also divided into two groups. But that freedom was given by the Buddha. Therefore, there is no reason for us to regard that Buddhists are vegetarians. As far as laymen are concerned, the Buddha has never uttered even one word. This is only for the monks. So there is no ground for us to say that the Buddha has introduced vegetarianism. Next one, how do we measure the consequences of killing a living being according to size or mental maturity? This is a very interesting question. There are many things for us to learn. This is from the Buddha, not from you. dried. I'm taking some medicines, you dried. Never mind, what is she? Good. So this question, life is life, whether big or small. In that act of killing, there are various factors and conditions for us to fulfill in order to increase or to reduce the reactions or the effects. Again, the way how we use our mind to kill. There are many things to discuss. And the lifespan, certain living beings, even today, can live few hundred years, such as elephants, certain snakes, frogs, and birds. They can live at least, they say, 200 to 300 years. Human beings' lifespan is reducing. And there are some other small living beings, insects, mosquitoes. They are also living beings. They too have the same feeling what we experience. Pain and fear of death, craving. They are not free from all those things. But their lifespan is maybe 1 or 2 weeks. Now the question is, what is the difference when we kill an elephant and a mosquito? Killing is killing, life is life. The effect of this act of killing differ according to the lifespan. This is one aspect. Size of the animals or any kind of living being, also we have to consider. To kill, in those days, of course today it is not a big problem. We can kill an elephant just like killing a mosquito today. But in those days, they had to spend sometimes so many hours or so many days to kill an elephant. But it is immaterial. When we are going to kill a valuable life, so validity of life also considered. So what is the value of an elephant's life and the mosquito's life? Again, differ. So the effect of this killing also, we increase according to the value of life. Another aspect. Virtues and good qualities. Let us take human beings. There are very cruel, wicked, dangerous human beings who endanger the society, who disturb innocent people. At the same time, there are very useful, very virtuous human beings who are very religious, very kind, and very useful human beings to the society. But all are human beings. So when we kill a wicked man who endangers the society, again when we kill a valuable human life, a harmless human life, the effect of this act of killing again differ according to the virtues and the good qualities. Take for instance, if we kill an ordinary man, again another man who observes 5 precepts, another man who observes more than 5 precepts, another one who observes so many other precepts and other virtues, another one who is regarded as a holy man, another one who has attained the first stage of sainthood, Sotapanna, another one attained second stage of sainthood, another one third stage of sainthood, another one fourth stage of sainthood, Arahant. Again, Pacceka Buddha. Of course, Samma Sambuddha or Supreme Enlightened Buddha we cannot include into this list because no one can kill a Buddha. The Buddhas must face a natural death. So we started from the beginning up to that maximum level who have developed their virtues and the qualities and perfections and wisdom and services towards others. So the effect of this act of killing again differ according to the virtues and the qualities and holiness and perfection. That is why many people believe it is a great sin to kill a holy man. Whatever religion they possess, it is immaterial. If man is regarded as a holy man, whether they are Christian or Hindus or Muslim or Buddhist, no difference. So we should not think as Buddhists, we should not kill Buddhists, but we can kill Christians and Muslims and Hindus. We should not think in that way. We should not think they are not holy. There are very holy, very understanding, very religious people among the followers of all these religions. So, we should not disregard or discriminate them. I think now you can understand. This is one area. Now another area. When we are going to kill, we are going on thinking, planning how to kill. Sometimes few months or few years we plan how to kill. Then we prepare many things to do this. Every thought that we create in our mind from the very beginning up to the last moment, we have created akusala karma in the mind. So we have accumulated so much bad karmas during this period by thinking and planning and preparing. Then the effect of this particular karma is very heavy because we have done a lot of mental pollution during this period. Again, another person, without creating such ideas earlier, suddenly his anger or intolerance flare up, he could not control it, then immediately he attack or shoot or step and kill. But he never thought this earlier. The effect again differ according to our mental pollution. To do this, we did not pollute our mind for a long period. Immediately, within few minutes. Even the existing law in many parts of the world also support this. This is called culpable homicide. When the judge come to know that this man could not control his anger, suddenly this idea appeared in his mind that he want to kill. And that judge never sentenced him to death. Culpable homicide means imprisonment, no death sentence. So the motivation ideas are very important. So the more we pollute our mind by developing our craving, jealousy, selfishness, anger, grudge and ill will, the more we accumulate bad karma. Again, under certain circumstances, since we have no other choice, we had to kill. Although we are reluctant to kill, we are not happy to do that, but we commit it. Those people do not pollute their mind. They do not develop hatred, anger, jealousy, grudge and ill will in their mind. Again, the effect differ because the mental pollution only very, very lesser degree. Just created the idea to kill. But there is no support from other evil thoughts on the mind. See how justifiable, the very reasonable way the Buddha has given all these interpretations. Again, another aspect. We had to fulfill 5 kinds of factors to experience the bad effect completely. First, we must know that this particular living being, whether human beings or animal, is a living being, not a dead one. Because there are some living beings, we do not know whether they are dead ones or got life or not. Take for instance, sometimes we can see snails. We can see on the road, just like a dead body. We do not know whether got life or not. Thinking that this is a dead body, so we pick them and throw away. After that we can see this poor creature struggling, this kind of thing. By doing that, we did not commit this particular bad karma because we never knew there is life. Then we had to create the idea in our mind that we want to kill. Purpose is immaterial. You can say, we kill for our food. That is immaterial. You cannot give excuses for that. We kill for our food, therefore there is no sin. From the Buddhist point of view, there is no excuse. You can give your own excuse, that's all. If not, this living being is harmful. Therefore we must kill. If this living being is harmful, destroying this life is not the only solution. There may be so many other solutions to get rid of this. Supposing a snake come to your house, whether you are Buddhist or otherwise, although you have attained first stage of sainthood also, at that time I am sure you take one big stick and hammer. You forget you are Buddhist at that time. Later you think, oh, I never knew that, like this. This is the human nature. We forget everything at that time. Then, assume, now we are here attending a religious service. Suddenly, very huge, fierce tigers enter into this building. We know this tiger is very dangerous, can kill few of us. And those who are very strong and very courageous, they bring something, iron rods and this and that and to hammer and try to topple or to kill this animal. Your intention is to protect others. You have not developed hatred directed toward this animal. Otherwise, there is no reason for you to kill. So the effect of this kind of killing is not that dangerous, because your intention is to save others, to protect others. But we cannot say from the Buddhist point of view that you are completely free. No. Certain aspects of the bad effect you have to experience. But you have courage to face this. Then we can regard you as heroes. You are prepared to pay any consequences in order to protect others. So we can respect you as heroes, but not as holy men. You know this is wrong, but even then, your idea is to protect others. Then, the method that you adopt, simply by thinking we cannot kill. We have to use either hand or legs or weapons or guns or poisons, fire or water. There must be some sort of method. So now you have completed all this. But still, that animal or human being did not die. First, you knew this is a living being. Then you created the idea in your mind you want to kill. Then you have adapted certain method to kill. Completed. But this living being did not die. So you have not completed. What will happen if these living beings are still alive? You have to experience certain bad effects for your mental pollution for this item. Since you have not separated this life, you are not going to pay the bad effect completely. When all these factors are completed, then you have to face the consequences completely. These are the important aspects or the factors we have to learn. Again, accidentally, we may kill millions of other living beings. Accidentally means without thinking that we want to kill. If not, we want to beat an animal to chase him away. No idea of killing. But the blow that we have given is very heavy. The animals died on the spot. We have not committed that act of killing because never created the idea in the mind that we are going to kill. For that beating, we may experience some bad effect, but no act of killing there. Unless we create this idea in the mind, we cannot commit it. So accidentally, we may kill so many, but we are not responsible since we have not polluted our mind to do that. See how many things are there. I think this is more than enough. The next one is, what is the Buddhist way of life and how does one practice it? Go, Sota, Ghana, Jivha, Kaya, Mana. 6. Eyes, ear, nose, mouth, body and mental objects. 6. These 5 things we take as organs. But these senses or these organs cannot do anything without the influence of the mind. just like electricity. The mental current must go through these five senses. Otherwise, we cannot see and not working. This eye muscle cannot see any object. And the sound vibration also we cannot catch without mental current. The smell and the taste. When we take our food, we experience a different taste. The taste we cannot experience simply by using our tongue or whatever it may be inside our mouth. The mental current must be there. And the feeling, whatever we touch or embrace, pleasant or unpleasant feeling, experienced by the mind. Body cannot experience. But the mental energy that works through the body, we use. Body cannot experience anything. And the mental objects that we create according to our experience. Assume a blind man by birth who has never seen anything in this world. This question is very simple. Buddhist way of life, the Buddha has introduced in a simple way, very simple way. So what is this? Try not to do bad thing as much as possible. You cannot be perfect religious people while leading a worldly life, household life, because you have so many commitments and duties and obligations to irritate you, provoke you, disturb you, arouse your anger, jealousy and so many things. This is the nature of worldly life. So by knowing this situation, try to avoid as much as possible. You know that. Then the second method is try to do good thing as much as possible. That means reduce your selfishness, reduce your jealousy, develop your compassion and kindness and generosity and understanding. And then you cultivate certain good qualities in your mind. Two aspects. Not yet completed. Then you must admit or you must try to understand the nature of your character, your temperament, your attitude, your mood. That is very important. And we do not know actually our own intrinsic nature, such as jealous type and greedy and hot-tempered, temperamental, moody. We must understand this. Then we know how to handle our life, our way of thinking, our way of talking, not to disturb others. Otherwise, we always disturb others. Our way of talking disturb others. Our way of handling things, doing things, disturb others. It depends on our character. So, the mind is responsible for that. By knowing if we are hot-tempered, if anger always flare up and disturb, then we must determine or we must train our mind to reduce immediately without allowing this anger to disturb others. Otherwise, you cannot stop anger completely. It is impossible. It will take long time. But you can calm this immediately by knowing the danger of this. even without showing others. Then jealousy and so many other things also like that. So when we reduce these evil forces from our mind, then the mind become very pure and calm and experience some sort of peace in our mind. These are the only three things we had to do to lead a Buddhist way of life. Besides this, we can analyze again 8 noble paths, but these are the grassroots. If we can control these things earlier, not necessary to do many other things, because the mind is responsible for everything. So the Buddhist way of life, external practices depend on your way of life. That means your culture, your tradition, your way of life. To be a good Buddhist, external practices are not compulsory. Now you come and attend these various religious services and offering, reciting and listening to the sermons. These are external practices which can pave the way for us to do those 3 things which I told you just now. Without doing those 3, without completing, all the other methods what we perform cannot cultivate real religious way of life. But these things, the environment, create inspiration, develop our confidence and devotion. Therefore, these practices are important. If we neglect this aspect at the beginning, you miss everything. Therefore, don't think, oh, these things are useless. To be a good Buddhist, not necessary to practice all these things. Then you miss everything. So Buddhist way of life is so simple. So we have to do only 3 things. Remember, try not to do bad thing, try to do some good thing, and try to maintain some sort of purity in the mind. This is Buddhist way of life. Anyway, this is not only for the Buddhist. What about others? So we cannot claim that this is the Buddhist way of life. If others also practice the same method, they can say this is Christian way of life, this is Muslim's way of life, this is Hindu way of life. Then we should not argue with them. You cannot say, because this is in our Buddhism. We are stupid people. The Buddha has introduced this for the whole mankind, not only for one particular group. Next one. How do we justify the importance of Buddhist way of life to the followers of other religions? So I answered already. How we justify the importance of the Buddhist way of life to the followers of other religions? There is no controversy. There is no argument whatsoever. I don't think there is follower of another religion whoever come and criticize or condemn us when we try to keep away from bad things. So when we try to do some good thing, or when you keep purity in our mind. So when we show this good example to others, not simply by talking, an example, when they associate with us, they can understand our way of life. How far we have developed our understanding, whether we are honest or not, whether we are kind or not, whether we are selfish or not. Because in these principles we can find universal value not only Buddhist value, common to every religion, common to all those who have no religions also. Since the Buddha has advised us to do all these things, we introduce this as Buddhism. But when we analyze, this method is common to whole mankind. Completed. This is the last answer. I still got time. So now I would like to invite questions from the audience. Good time, few more minutes. Just now I mentioned the Buddha's attitude, how he has accommodated plant life. He did not accommodate plant life as fully developed life, just like human life or the animal life, because we have 5 senses. Our feeling or sensation, perception, and mental tendencies and consciousness. In the plant life, you can see only sensation, but all the other 5 factors are no more. Therefore, since the Buddhas and his disciples had to work with all the other religionists in India who strongly believe that this is a fully developed life, he wanted to cooperate with them because it is harmless. This is the Buddhist attitude. Otherwise, we never regard plant life as a fully developed life. Sensitivity is there, cannot go beyond that.
ධර්ම ශ්‍රවණය කිරීමෙන් හා දහම් පඬු පූජා කිරීමෙන් ලබන ලද සියලු කුසල පුණ්‍ය සම්භාර ධර්මයන් පළමු කොට ලෝක ශාසනය ආරක්ෂා කරන දෙවියන්ට හා තම තමන්ගේ නමින් නැසීමේ ගියා වූ ඥාති මිත්‍රාදීන්ටත් අනුමෝදන් කරවීමෙන් මේ සෑම දිනමත් මෙතෙන් පටන් නිවන් දක්නා ජාත් දක්වා නරකාදී සතර අපායෝත්පත්ති දුක්ඛයකට කිසියම්ම කාලයකවත් නොපෙමින දිව්‍ය ලෝක සම්පත් මනුස්ස ලෝක සම්පත් ලබා අවසානයේ උතුම් වූ අමා මහ නිවන් සම්පත් ලැබීමට හේතු වේවායි වාසනාව වේවායි සිතා චිත්ත ප්‍රීතියෙන් යුක්තව සාදර සිතින් පින් අනුමෝදන් විය යුතුය.